Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hello, this video I want to show us tricks on how to calculate percentages. The tricks that I am going to teach under this series of mental math tricks is based on the book by Presh Walker, The Best Mental Math Tricks. I'm going to start with percentages. While we can calculate percentages using calculator, there are simpler methods that we can use to solve them in our head. First, before we start, we are going to look at a basic skill for calculating percentages. First, we look at finding 10% of any number. Now, to find 10% of any number is very simple. Finding 10% of any number is the same as dividing the number by 10. For instance, if we said we should find 10% of 50, for instance. So 10% of 50 is the same as 50 divided by 10, which is 5. So another easier way of doing it is, if you are finding 10% of 50, all you do is you move the decimal point to the left by 1 time the number of zeros. So 10% of 50, the decimal point will move to this side. So this will be the same thing as 5.0. So to find this 10% of any number is very, very simple. Let's take an example to see 10% of 125. Following the method I just said. So if you shift the decimal point from here, from this side to here, then 10% of 125 will be the same thing as 12.5. The second easier trick is calculating 50% of any number. So to calculate 50%, all you do is you divide the number by 2. So if, for instance, we are to calculate 50% of 75. So 50% of 75 is just the same thing as 75 divided by 2. So 75 divided by 2 will give us 37.5. So to calculate 50% of any number, all you do, you divide that number by 2. So let's look at another example. Let's find 50% of 5,000. 50% of 5,000. So to solve this, all we do, we say 5,000 divided by 2, and 5,000 divided by 2 is 2,500. That is 2,500. To do other percent around this, for instance, if you want to do 5%, 80. So recall that we say 10% is you move the decimal point by 1 point. So what you do first is you just find 10% of the number, then you half it. So first, 10% of 80 will be 8. So half of 8, 5% of 80 therefore is half of 8. 8 divided by 2, and that will give us 4. So this is how easy we can do this. So if, for instance, we want to find 15% of 52. So first we find 10%, then we find half of 10%. So if we look for 10% of 52, this will give us, you move the decimal point one place, this will give us 5.2. Then 5% of 52, that is half of this, 2.6, I mean. So therefore, the 50% will be easily of 52 is easily 5.2 plus 2.6, and that gives us 7.8. So you can see how easy this can be done in our head. So if you are enjoying the lecture, you can consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. We can use another trick. For instance, if they said we should find 3% of 50. So 3% of 50, you can use a different trick by saying 3% of 50, you interchange the percent. It's the same thing as 50% of 3. So, and 50% of 3 is half of 3. That is 1.5. So you can confirm it. So finding percent can also follow commutative property of multiplication. Let's find 25% of 104. So 25%, first we find 50%. So 50% of 104 will give us half. That is 52. Then we now find half of this. So the 25% of 104 will definitely be half of this, which is 26. You can try this example. Put your answer at the comment section if you are enjoying this trick. So let's look at 10% of 6. That is number 1. Number 2, 75% of 46. You can pause the video and answer this. Let's see if it will correspond with what we are going to do. So let's look at the answer. The first one, 10% of 6, this will be, we move the decimal point this way, so this will give us 0.6. Then 75% of this, first we find the 50%, so let's look for 50% of 46. So 50% of 46 will give us 23. Then let's find 25% of 46. That is half of this, so that is 23 divided by 2. So 23 divided by 2 will give us 11.5. Therefore, so 75% of 46, you add the 2 value, that is 23 plus 11.5, and that gives us 34.5. So you can see how easy these things are to get it. So if you are enjoying the lecture, kindly consider subscribing to the YouTube channel. So I'll do one more example. Assuming we are looking for 30% of 168. First, let's look for 10% of 168. 10% of 168 will give us, you move the decimal point this way, will give us 16.8. So once you get that 10%, then you triple the answer. 30% of 168 will now be 3 times 16.8, 50.4. So if you enjoyed the lecture, you can consider subscribing to our YouTube channel and refer it to other people to learn this easy trick. Thank you for listening.